Yesterday, at the top of this hour, we looked out at the 197 House Republicans and asked a question that at another time would seem simple. How many would vote yes on a resolution condemning President Trump's racist comments about 4 sitting congresswomen? Now we have our answer. 4. 4 of the 197 House Republicans, just 4, willing to sign on to last night's historic rebuke of a president. The rest have now officially co-signed the president's toxic brand of racial strife. And we should all expect more in a brand new interview with the Daily Mail. Trump sounds pleased with the results of the week of racial strife and how it played out. From that interview, quote, asked if he planned that sequence of events and the one that followed yesterday, which ended with the passage of a resolution condemning him, Trump paused. Well, let's put it this way. I'm not unhappy. And at a campaign rally tonight, we might see more attacks, more divisiveness front and center. Washington Post reports this, quote, the president has held all of his campaign rallies this year in states he won in 16, including Florida and Pennsylvania, with another set for North Carolina tonight. And he's shown no interest in toning down the incendiary rhetoric that has made him unpopular among Black, Hispanic, and female voters. Joining our conversation, former White House Communications Director for President Obama, Jen Palmieri, and New York Times editorial board member Mara Gay. Jen.
Well, where to start? Yeah, I'm not sure that he planned it out this way, but of course he's going to, in retrospect, say that he did and that he's happy with it, which, you know, there's no bottom for appalling behavior. Right. And I do think that this is what he wants to make his, you know, among the things he wants to make his campaign about. You know, you talked before about can Democrats, how do they manage this and can they take the high road, and is that, you know, politically damaging for them? And I don't think they have much of a choice, right? We can't control what he does. And I do think that you have to call it out. You have to call it racist. You have to defend the people who are being attacked. And that's just because, you know, if you're not willing to do that, like, why bother? Why bother having an opposition? Why bother trying to protect the republic, for that matter? But I think at the same time, you have to give an argument for why what the Democratic nominee will offer, why what the Democrats will offer in general is going to be better for the people that have been left behind. And you're going to have to do both things. And, you know, he gets to wage his campaign, and it's going to be ugly every day from now until November of 2020. And but you can't ease off and think that there's some way around this fight for Democrats. They have to call him out.
Mara, I would hope that more than just people who have been left behind are attracted to an anti-Trump message at this point. I mean, Congresswoman Bass was on the show this hour yesterday saying that she's worried that someone's going to get hurt. And I know Frank Figliuzzi has some of the same concerns. I mean, how does the message, how is it not everybody but the self-avowed racists that stand with an attack like this?
Yeah, I think that's the heart of the question. At this point, trying to stop Donald Trump from saying what he wants to say is futile. I think the really important part is to call upon other members of society. Where are the faith leaders right now? Where are the business leaders? Where are the Republicans? Where are the members of the public who are in prominent positions who know better? And I guess that is my great disappointment. Donald Trump is a white supremacist, but he's only one person, so he can't do this by himself. To me, that suggests that we're not just in a political crisis, but a moral crisis. Donald Trump is an expert at exploiting a very, very old sin, an inheritance that we have of racism in this country. And I think it's very difficult because he knows how to do that, but the rest of us don't know how to have a productive conversation and move beyond that hate. I also think it's important to note that those tweets that the president wrote, referring to those 4 members of Congress as congresswomen, you know, as a journalist, as an observer of politics, as an American, and as a black woman, I viewed those as, you know, indirect threats. And whether he meant them that way or not, they put targets on those members of Congress. And these are extremely dangerous. And I think those of us who are from members of minority groups that have experienced historically experienced discrimination can recognize that. And the question is whether other Americans are going to stand up for us and one another.
the point that she makes because after Charlottesville, you did sort of see that. You saw people, civic leaders, business leaders, come out and feel the need to speak out, even if they weren't involved in politics.
All the business leaders quit. All the Trump business leaders.
Right.
But I don't want to lose this story. There's a second person 2 days in a row that has made this point about violence and about threats. And Frank Figliuzzi, I just want to get your take on all of that from a law enforcement perspective.
So make no mistake, a strategy based on hatred, based on calling and painting an entire group of people and specific individuals by name as evil or bad is going to get somebody hurt. What's happening with the president's Twitter feed right now is essentially a form of online radicalization. We see it in the national security context in terms of terrorism, and we see the time to radicalization in the extremist Islamist world as ramping up faster and faster. And rest assured, there are unstable people in this country who will feel no pushback now from what Trump has done. Republican Party not pushing back hard. We see a white nationalist group endorsing the president's sentiments. And with that, people will begin to feel empowered and emboldened to think like the president. The other thing we need to understand is the president has taken a page right out of the strategy book of the Russian intelligence services. What did Robert Mueller tell us in his report about Russian attempts to divide us along racial lines? What has the director of national intelligence said about increasing attempts by the Russians to divide us along ethnic and racial lines? Richard Engel of NBC News a couple of months ago did a great report on Russian strategizing to divide the United States along race lines. We have a president now who doesn't need the Russian intelligence service. He's doing it all by himself.
Robert Costa, your body of reporting on the president's political birth really being tied to all the racist undertones and it's not even underbelly anymore. I hate to use that word. The overt racism in the Republican Party is in a league of its own. I saw you last night in the 11th hour talking about some of it. Just tie what's happening today in this story to everything you've known and reported about Donald Trump in this category since you've been covering him.
On Capitol Hill and here in Washington and on the campaign trail, I'm constantly encountering President Trump's critics who say, how can this be happening? Where are the Republicans? And I just answer to them repeatedly. If you look at the recent history, the answers are all there. The Republican Party, when President Trump was a businessman and questioning President Obama's love of country, his credentials, his birth in the United States, they sought his endorsement. Mitt Romney, running for president, accepted President Trump's endorsement at that time in 2012. You had a Republican Party who then went into the throes of a 2013 immigration fight a year later, threw out the playbook of Reince Priebus and others at the RNC, and they enabled President Trump as an outsider businessman to rise. And they see him as the key to keeping power. Romney, they saw in 2012, could not win in many of these Midwestern states. They thought they would be out of power for a generation, especially with President Obama's rise. And so they are explaining him away at every turn, not just now, but over the past decade, because they see celebrity populism and the use of racist tweets as something that's part of the package if they want to keep power.
You know, enough is enough, and I want to talk to the white people out there, okay? I want to talk to wealthy white people, because I've had it. I've had discussions when I talk to friends, people I know. He's good for the economy, but he's good for the economy. They're all jerks anyway. No, it's time. By the way, if you're somebody who's poor and you believe Donald Trump is going to get you a job, maybe you don't have the luxury of a moral imperative, okay? But everybody else, shame on you at this point. Enough. This is where you stand up. And if you don't, you own it. And I talked about this yesterday. You are no different than if you were on a subway train and you saw 4 white nationalists screaming and an African-American woman, go home, go back where you came from. If you vote for Trump, it's like you're going like this and own it. No more he's good for the economy. No more, well, they're all jerks. He just says these things. We are heading to such a dangerous place. And guess what? You look at history, it can happen here. Maybe it's the Jews next. Oh, I forgot. His daughter's married to a Jew. Who says? You know, and I come from a place, I come from a group of people where it happened to. 6 million of them. And I'm not saying Trump is that person, but every playbook that's happening, every single playbook, creating the other, getting rich people to look the other way, getting people to not trust the press, getting the judicial system in your pocket, getting an entire branch of government, the legislative branch, the Republicans, to just march with you, to act above the law, to say that you're going to put your adversaries in jail. What else do we? And now, hey, you dark person, if you don't like it here, go back from where you came. Right. Boy, it's time for us and time for white people who maybe it's not so great for your pocketbook. Go in and look at your children and decide who you are.
Let me bring this back to some reporting. Robert Costa, we had Tim Alberta on earlier this week, who's got a great book out, and he quotes Kellyanne Conway as saying something pretty astute. She was a pollster before she had her current role, but she says people vote based on what affects them, not what offends them. Do you have any sense in your reporting that that calculation is tipping anywhere in Washington?
That calculation is not tipping, at least in the White House's view. They believe that, as Donnie was saying, people are going to vote on their financial status, and they believe that the tax cuts and the economy and the stock market being up is enough. The moral questions have faded in many American voters' minds. You have a litany of issues President Trump has raised about his conduct, about his finances, about his personal history, about his business, that are all out there, have all been deeply reported. We're still trying to find out more things about Epstein and other fronts, but a lot's out there. And the moral case against President Trump, most Republicans believe, will be ineffective if the Democrats put it front and center in 2020.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.